start. Okay, so the recording is started. Welcome everybody. This is a meeting under the CNCF Foundation. So if you follow the CNCF Code of Conduct, which can be summarized to be nice to each other. And yeah, so like the past 2 days I was off. So I would like to give the word to Ross that maybe has a bit more clear overview on what are the topics of the day.
Yes, yeah, I can do that. And also, I'm not sure if we've got any new joiners. If there's any new joiners that would like to introduce yourself, now's a good time for that. Or I can get given an intro. But if anyone wants to do that, yeah, please jump in.
Yeah, that's a good point. Last time I forgot to do this.
But yeah, I think like it's mostly kind of familiar faces. Yeah, I can kind of give an overview of where we are, and we've made some progress on the automation side. So the pull request we had to manage the cluster with Tofu and Flux is merged, and then we've also got the Falco PR merged. So we've got Falco running in the cluster. What I can maybe just do actually to show something a bit more exciting, I can share my screen and just show the Kepler dashboard that we've got. Let me just do that.
I'll take the notes in the meanwhile.
Thanks. Should be the right tab. Is this coming through okay? Yeah. So this is the dashboard we've got running, the standard kind of Kepler dashboard. And so what's cool down here is we can see also kind of the overview of the namespace. So actually most of the power consumption is being estimated is for kind of kube system, and then we've got monitoring and then also Falco. But what's nice is we've got kind of everything that we need deployed in a GitOps manner, on the cluster. And then so now we want to move to the next step, which is working out which metrics we want to collect. So there's an issue I'll post in the chat, which is kind of the one where we're capturing that. I always do this kind of Zoom is just hiding the screen with me. I just stopped sharing. That should make it easier. Yeah, so this is the issue. Yeah, let me just share again to show that. But this is what we're kind of capturing, the first of the metrics. And what we want to do is look at the energy consumption from Kepler, but also look at the metrics, the SRE type metrics that we want to collect. So this here is the list that kind of the Falco team came up with that they would like. So they've got CPU or memory. They're also interested in the kernel event rate as well. We do have an issue that we're also working through as well, which is currently the Falco team haven't got a Prometheus exporter deployed. They're reading metrics from some files on disk. So what I think might be a good approach is if we use the built-in kind of Kubernetes metrics for CPU memory, so the container memory working set bytes and kind of the equivalent for CPU that we'll have deployed already from Node Exporter. And then there's also the Kepler, there's the Kepler energy consumption. I was just kind of grabbing the metrics earlier. Yeah, I'll post them in chat as well. So there's these three metrics here. And in that issue, what we want to start doing is having a Grafana dashboard so we can kind of visualize this. And also what we're going to start with is measuring the idle consumption for Falco. And that's kind of the good kind of starting point that we can make. And then we don't need to have a synthetic workload deployed. And typically the approach is you measure the idle power consumption first, and then you deploy the synthetic workload, and then you measure an underload. But as a starting point, I think if we could capture these three metrics, have them in the dashboard, and then we can start, working through what the time periods, how we want to work that through. Nick, do you want to add anything on this on the metrics?
I just caught the tail end of that, but yes, thank you for mentioning that we're starting with the idle consumption. I didn't catch much more to be able to add.
Yes. Shall I do a quick recap? So we're just kind of starting with where we are with the cluster. So I kind of showed the Kepler dashboard that we've got deployed. So we've got the new cluster, we've got everything deployed, and then I just put in chat the issue where we're gathering the metrics. And the three metrics I posted there are the two kind of Kubernetes kind of built-in metrics for CPU and memory, and then also the Kepler metrics. And I was kind of flagging those because we have the issue with Falco, where Falco has some metrics that are on disk that we need to capture. And what I was thinking is if we could maybe start with these three metrics, and then in parallel we can work through how we get the Falco metrics into Prometheus. How does that sound as an approach?
Yeah, I think so that's a good idea. I think I need to probably create new issues from the main tracking issue for each one, and I'm wondering, yeah, if folks would like to take on different metrics that they would then own. So you see, maybe I can share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Right, so I think we need to add the Falco metrics that are on disk. I don't think that we have, well, we have these, but I'm not sure if they are the same as what Falco exposes. So yeah, one of the main things that we also need to do is to have Grafana, a public Grafana dashboard. Have we already discussed this?
No, we haven't talked about that yet. We're just kind of looking at the metrics issue, but I think that's a good point. If we can make those dashboards public, then everyone can see what's going on, and I think it's definitely an important issue to look at.
Yeah, so I'll take as a to-do to split this issue and then once we have the public Grafana dashboard, I think it should make it easier to visualize. Although I'm not sure that that people would be able to edit it.
Yes, what I was wondering was we're already managing kind of the Kepler dashboard, via Flux. So we just have it deployed as a config map. So what we could do as kind of a dev cycle is have the config map, deployed to the cluster managed by Flux, and then have it publicly accessible. So I think, I don't think we can make it editable via Grafana, but then everyone can see that, and we can kind of do multiple iterations. That was sort of the best way I could think of to see how we could kind of visualize it, but also kind of start managing the code for that. Do you think that works, or is there a better way of doing that?
Well, so I was thinking that essentially a Grafana dashboard is composed of panels that just visualize Prometheus queries. So with read-only with a read-only kubeconfig, would it be possible to send queries to Prometheus with a read-only kubeconfig so that people can create those prom queries and then we can add them to the dashboard through a PR afterwards? I'm wondering, I'm not sure. What about, Debunker says, what about users with view, access, and Grafana? Yeah, so so a public Grafana dashboard would make it would do the same thing, I think, because it would be public to everyone. We just
Yes,
need people. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Nikki. Yeah, I think that would be kind of a good good starting point. And we do need to do just some networking work in terms of making the Grafana public, which is going to start progressing. That was the issue I just created here. One thing that we can do is Equinix have elastic IPs. So what we can do is the node where Prometheus is running, we can attach an elastic IP there via kind of the Equinix API. And then we could have either an ingress or gateway API behind it. I was thinking it would be quite nice to use Gateway API, but also K3S also comes with traffic installed. And I think maybe also the Grafana chart might have an ingress. So it might just be easier to just set up traffic as an ingress controller. And then yeah, if we could get a domain for that elastic IP, that would be perfect. Yeah, we can start with the IP, but then we can have a domain for that down the road. But so we need to extend the TOFU code a bit to kind of have an ingress controller and have the elastic IP. We could also do Gateway API. When I was looking at Cilium, it's a bit more experimental. It might be easy just to have an ingress set up just so we can get access.
And in parallel, we can. Oh, sorry. What about Nginx Gateway API?
Yes, I think that's another way of of going there. We can have that deployed with Flux as well. Yeah, it's not an area I've kind of worked with kind of easily. I think Gateway API is the newer approach, and if there's a way we can get that set up, then that'd be great. But I think if there's people interested in working on this issue, having the Grafana being public, I think will help us a lot with this. Yeah, the benefit with traffic is it comes kind of pre-installed. We disabled it for now. But yeah, I think also we can kind of maybe progress this one asynchronously. I think kind of the important part is to do the networking part, so we can have Grafana being publicly available.
In the meantime, I think it would be really great to make it as easy as possible for contributors to gather metrics from the cluster. And so we have so Dipankar contributed the read-only kubeconfig recently. Now I want to see if it's possible to run. Can you run a prom query using that kubeconfig? And if so, it would mean that anyone can add any metric that they want and like contributed to this project. So I'll get back to you on that one.
Yes, because we've got the read-only kubeconfig now, which I think could be really useful for this. We just need to maybe just try it out with the connectivity, how we can how we can make it easy for people to work on the dashboards.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the other issue I created was about having separate nodes of Falco and the rest of the stack, Prometheus and Flux. But I think actually that's probably kind of lesser priority than the dashboards, because we're not super concerned about having really accurate measurements right now. I think the most important part is to start iterating. So we could I think we could tackle this maybe after we've got Grafana set up.
Yeah, Nandesh.
Yeah, so hi everyone. So question is, how do we intend to calculate the SCI score? Do we have any details on that, Nikki, Ross?
I think we're going to start with the Kepler metric. It gives us the energy consumption, and then we can use that as the starting point for calculating SCI. But I think that's, yeah, at the moment we're kind of at the energy consumption part. The SCI part we're still working through. And is that a good summary, Nikki, you think?
Yeah, we are. So the idea is to have a set of traditional SRE metrics as well as the SCI, which I don't see any reasons why we can't collect, some of these metrics in parallel with the energy consumption metric and make this like surface these numbers on the dashboard. So in fact, I would say this is, up for grabs. I'll open an issue and then anyone can take it on if you're interested.
Okay. And then for the second question I have is the workload for Falco. In the previous discussions, we thought of having some sort of real scenario public workload. Has that already been deployed? And is that all the metrics that we see right now, is that being collected based on that workload?
We've been looking at using the microservices demo project from Google, and we've got a PR that Antonio prepared that's in review, that we can merge to deploy it. We just haven't deployed it yet because we want to start with the other measurements. But that's what we were looking at, was microservices demo, and I believe also we talked about that with the Falco team as well. And Melissa thought that was would also let us do that because it will generate the kernel events that we need. What's quite nice about that microservices demo is it has its own load generator built into it that will start running when you deploy it.
Awesome, thank you. And yeah, I'd be happy to help out with the SCI metrics. We can chat further in the issue.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think that that kind of assigning the metrics and starting that investigation, is good. And the nice thing is we've got everything deployed now to be able to do that.
Leo, would you like to share your feedback also, so it's on the recording? Because I think that's an important discussion to have.
Yes, and I think we kind of talked about this already in the past, but so and we also talked about this during this meeting, that we have like two kind of sets of metrics. One type of metric, like energy consumption, we can just measure this regardless of the project that runs. But some other metrics like the SCI score depend actually on the software that we run. So we need to tune it a little bit. So the independent metrics are kind of simpler in that way. And for the other ones that depend on the project, we need to write sort of like a, I don't know, like a step-by-step plan, five-step program or something like this that the maintainers can walk through to provide us the info that we need to actually measure their software. So this is like kind of, yeah, the interface. between the platform that we have and the project that we run.
It's interesting because when we're going to talk about the Arna's projects in next week, I think, the way they do it is they get like an application from the, like as part of this proposal to, or application to get their app measured by the model. You have to write what the functional unit is, like how does it scale, etc. So maybe we could do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there are like ways to reduce this, that we don't need a lot of upfront information about certain parameters. I mean, that would be ideal, but as far as I understand, but I mean, we are like in this process, like in the beginning. But as far as I understand, we need like to assess this and probably also have like different kind of parameters for the scaling factor and other things. Because maybe like the consumption is not like linear, could be different. But it would be interesting to hear what Arne thinks about this and other people, maybe also the GSF. We have like, tested this out a lot more in the wild.
At the same time, I think
Yeah.
it was, oops, sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying that it makes sense to split this. So the SCI and other metrics will certainly take a lot more time to get on the dashboards and so on. So it would be good to capsule this kind of in like a separate work package, that we are not waiting for the SCI. Even the SCI is very important and we want to have this. But it's kind of like we can have this like as a separate non-blocking thing, I would say.
Let's start with the Kepler metrics, since that's one of the factors, and then we can iterate. So I think gathering and displaying the energy metrics of Falco would be a really good goal for, we don't do sprints, but in the next couple of weeks. And that would entail also, looking at how contributors can gather those metrics, like what we're saying about port forwarding to Prometheus and writing the query, etc. And if that's part of the idle test case, that would be really great.
Do we have an issue to investigate the SCI score and work sort of on like a plan how to assess it for?
We don't. We have this, but I can break this up and separate this into its own SCI thing. I'll do that.
Maybe that would be good, yeah. And then I think Nadesh mentioned he's interested in working on it.
Yes, happy to. Also, I've been discussing this with Ross. There is a impact framework by Doing Software Foundation, which has a built-in models to calculate some of this. There's also opportunity to extend and add new models to that framework by adding support for scraping Prometheus, along with adding a we don't need to do a specific model for Kepler, but some sort of generic model for containerized workload, which can then be passed to SCI model, and then this is a whole bunch of modules which can be connected together in Impact Framework, and output of that could be then ingested back into Prometheus and exposed via Grafana. Any thoughts on leveraging such framework, which is already out there, open sourced?
I didn't have a deep look on the impact framework. I saw when it was presented at the event that the Green Software Foundation organized. It looked like they were still in an early stage. So like a question would be to assess how much effort it is to build a module. Of course, would be super nice to collaborate with other open source framework, but also we need to understand how complicated it would be to fit, and like what kind of work would be done. I think we can open a separate issue for this, and you can follow up with the discussion, and like we can have a more detailed questions and answer regarding that. My first impression when I saw the impact framework and I asked a bit around about it was that this was still in an early stage to be used. Have you had other experiences around it? Have you used it?
Yes, you are right. It's still early. I have used it just for experimentation, and it is pretty easy to extend. It is pretty easy to add new models. They also have a hackathon coming up in March, for which is exactly the opportunity where they are looking out from the community to help them out with extending the models. And I feel like if we can leverage these two opportunities together, where on one side we could do green reviews, and other side using impact framework to understand and measure the carbon intensity score, that'll be win-win for both the communities, and will be a good synergy between the foundations.
Yeah, just to add from my side, because we've been discussing this a bit as well. I think impact framework is definitely very interesting to us, kind of medium to long term. I do share some of Antonio's concerns about it is quite an early stage. And I think also having a Kepler model and another planning to add more models during Carbon Hack, I think could be very useful. It's just at what stage do we kind of integrate? Because we've also got kind of the goal of KubeCon and having a demo of what we have, kind of the POC there. Maybe for the POC, we could just start having energy consumption, but it would be nice to have SCI there as well. It's just how that fits in with impact framework as well. It's maybe slightly too early for us. But I think it's worth exploring it, and I think medium term, if there's logic we can plug in and we can use impact framework and collaborate with GSF, I think that's very positive.
Like Rose mentioned, a very good point. We have already an objective for the KubeCon, so maybe we can put it as more like exploration phase after the KubeCon. So at first we take out the metrics ourselves, and then we see how we can leverage other frameworks and improve probably what is right now just a quick and dirty solution to see if there is a proof of concept of our green review and how it would look like.
Do we? Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Do we have a good understanding of what do we want to present at KubeCon? At least what should be the final outcome?
Yeah. So like basically we want to have some so like we want to deploy Falco, which is like our first open source project, and we deployed in our infrastructure where all the measures happens, and we have this dashboard to sort the metrics. That would be the first step, and then I think like we test it first idle and then at scale, and then we see how these metrics would look like, and then the second phase would start, and if we reach there before KubeCon, where we should try to at least point out what are the resources that are like influencing the most of the energy utilization. So it's for the KubeCon, like it's nice to have a first demo, so something to show. So we have done this, and we have analyzed this project in this way, and we have found out this much. Is it clear?
Yep, makes sense. So basically, if I understand this correctly, Kepler already has a dashboard, Grafana dashboard. Do we plan to leverage that dashboard and show that as an outcome, or do we need to extend that further in terms of what we want to show?
Yeah, we need some. So if you take a look at the metrics issue, we need some, as also Leo said, we have some metrics coming from like some SRE metrics which are not on Kepler, and they're only native Kubernetes, and some other metrics that come from Kepler, and we are not using all of the metrics coming for Kepler. So we need a custom dashboard to show a bit of both. And then that's why we have this issue for setting up the Grafana dashboard, which is a bit custom.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Yes, I think it's also worth mentioning we've got kind of the longer term goal as well of having those kind of dashboards that bring in dev stats as well. So at some point we'll have kind of be able to people access the metrics through dev stats as well. I'm not sure whether we'd have that, you know, in time for KubeCon, but that's kind of longer term the direction we're going in as well. I think there's also, you know, like Leo was saying, that a lot of kind of the hardest parts is working at the functional unit and kind of going through that kind of process. And I think that could also then be reused for an impact framework model as well. I think there's some figuring out that we need to do that would be useful, you know, like in both contexts.
So which metrics do we want to have collected about Falco? So speaking of, you know, the milestone of what we want to have by KubeCon, we've discussed the CI, Kepler, traditional metrics, impact framework. We've also talked about Falco doing that, like just collecting metrics at idle. But see if we can visualize what we want to have by KubeCon. Yeah, we do have the roadmap table. Let's revisit this. So yeah, there was a milestone, but the issue is that here it's on the tag repo, and apparently you cannot add issues from another repo to a milestone in a different repo, so that's annoying. But I can move this to the working group repo. And if we can break this up a little bit more, I think it would be good to do that. Do we have I would say Kepler metrics for idle Falco is one immediate next step that we can work towards. Would someone like to, you know, bring a different idea?
Yeah, I think also Kepler metrics for then the like at Falco under pressure, so production Falco. I don't know. So like stress test Falco, right?
Yeah,
And I
so
think,
like the first test.
yeah. And then I think also one point before that, I mean, we already did big part, but it's like to set up the old infrastructure, right? For like this we did it, but was also part of, like, I think you can put it as a first bullet point, right? Before collecting the metrics, the like design and set up the infrastructure.
And which parts would be missing there to be more
No, it's not a
specific?
missing part. It's what we did. It's just to document what we did.
Okay, so documentation for the infrastructure we've set up.
Yeah, I wanted, like, if it was a tick box, I wanted just to add a box which was ticked. Like just mention that we did this infrastructure setup up to now. It's not like as a to-do list. I don't know. What is the status of Falco, like of the deployment of Falco into our?
We merged Melissa's PR, and now we just need to see there's some flux configuration that we need to kind of tweak, and then yeah, that's about it.
Okay. So we're not too far away from getting the first metrics, right? Like, and there is no blockers.
I think so. Yeah, there's not. We've identified our blockers, I think, so pretty well. For idle Falco, I wanted to. I mean, I think we need an issue for that as well. For idle Falco, we need for the tests. I was talking with Marlo about how we would do the benchmark tests. One of the important things is that we need the isolation that we already have an issue for, that Ross has identified. We need like a time frame, so specific duration of the tests. And although I guess if Falco is deployed and it's isolated, I wouldn't expect to see any changes, any fluctuations in the energy consumption if it's idle, but that's something we'll discover once we have the dashboard up and Kepler monitoring it. But yeah, how do we document the results is another question. So like a CSV file, or yeah.
Yes, I'm also wondering whether we write the results back to Prometheus, because I think that kind of goes in the DevStats direction in the future, because I think as I understand it, we'll need to kind of connect the main DevStats to our Prometheus. So if we wrote the metrics back, maybe using Push Gateway or something, and then made the dashboard that showed it, that might be a way of doing it, and then we could store the metrics in Prometheus. I guess also once we've got kind of GitHub Actions running as well, we could also have it as like an artifact in the GitHub Action. I guess there's different options about where we want to store the metrics, store the results. But yeah, I think if we start having that dashboard where we visualize the metrics, and then maybe as then as a next step, we can see, how we kind of collect the results as well.
I agree, yeah, that if we can write the results. That would be back to Prometheus or on a dashboard or something. That would be great. I haven't really pictured what that would look like.
Yes, I looked into a little bit. And it looked like with Push Gateway, you can kind of generate the metrics in the kind of Prometheus format, and then you can write it to there as a kind of an alternative to scraping. But yeah, it's not something I've used a lot though. But it looked like it might be an option just to write things back.
Okay, that's a good point. Let me create the issue for the, or we, as in, like, if anyone else would like to help with writing the issue for the idle test, and we can add that.
I can write an issue for the idle test. Should I do it now?
Thank you. Yeah, if or now or like.
Yeah, I'll do it now.
Leo, to answer your question in the chat, we have we've been discussing about the requirements. Versioning is, kind of TBD, but we haven't gone into this one. The requirements, we added some labels, and Ross is looking into how to isolate Falco as part of this issue. So it's related. Then there's, the synthetic workload. Antonio has opened a PR for this. The deployment PR was completed. I think we can close this issue. I'll get comments here. And the access to the Falcon namespace. So we have the read-only kube config. I'm not sure if this is enough, but that's something we're gonna have to discuss. Although they do need access to files, so I'm not sure if the read-only kube config gives enough access to do that. I doubt it. Yeah, so that's kind of an overview. This one I have not looked at it. But yeah. Yeah.
Yes, on the separate nodes, with the Equinix stack, at the moment we just have like a list of the worker nodes that we can create, and my thinking then was to add the kind of node labels to that as well, so then we can kind of control how many nodes we want to run, and manage it through Tofu. Maybe we also need to use taints and tolerations. Potentially, we could add a taint to the Falco node that would then stop us running kind of Prometheus or Flux there. But then we would need the Falco team to add that toleration. I was going to start with having the node labels, and then we can see whether that's enough or whether we need taints and tolerations as well.
So that, yeah. Having a standard declaration to make sure nothing is deployed or scheduled there, that would be great. But yeah, let's see what happens with the labels first. Do you would there's a conversation about a push gateway and exporter. Would you like to talk about that next?
Yes, I think that's kind of our main two options is whether we have create an exporter or we have use push gateway. What it looked like was with push gateway, you're basically just generating the metrics yourself and then posting them as opposed to scraping them. So I think for example, doing it like in a bash script would be quite hard. We might need to use it in Go, and if we're doing that, then maybe just create an exporter is the way to go. I think that part needs some investigation. I've built a few exporters, but not kind of recently, so help on that would be much appreciated.
Okay, so it sounds like we don't have any blockers, but we are kind of like at the end of the automation phase, and now the metrics are coming up. So we need to figure out all the issues, which we talked about. Or are there blockers, Nikki?
We don't have any. Well, we unblocked ourselves when it comes to the AWS credits because now we're using a personal AWS account. So that's a little bit blocked, and maybe we could
So we still have
your help.
Okay, we still have not the account from the CNCF.
Yeah, we haven't gotten access to AWS account.
Okay. So there's because I saw was like this comment that something was created. Okay, which snap stacks are recommended? All right. Yeah, I can ask. I don't know why this takes so long.
Yeah. Thank you. That would be great if you can chase that.
Yeah.
Yes, that'd be much appreciated because then we can then just switch across to using AWS accounts and kind of complete that part. We just wanted to get the tofu PR merged because it was holding up lots of other things. But yeah, I think on blockers we're looking pretty good for things like the Grafana. If we add the extra permissions we need to the redundant kube config, then we can do that quite soon, and then in parallel we can work on making the Grafana public. And I think for a start, we could start with the IP and then get the domain names kind of later on. So I think we can kind of progress that and put most of the focus into the metrics part.
So I will also write an issue for the SCI discussion, like a tracking issue. What do you think?
I think Nikki created already one.
All right, then I missed it. I'm sorry. I was taking notes probably. All right, right. I did not refresh the page. Sorry.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's there. So, I'm here to write our milestone again in the right repo, just to finish off this meeting with some hope. So measure well, this is, maybe we can do the energy footprint. energy consumption. Or we can look at, start graphing the SCI index of Falco, starting with energy. Yep, good call. Okay, would anyone like to give feedback on this milestone?
This is the milestone for the QCon.
Yeah.
Okay. For me, the fourth point, start graphing the SCI's index of Falco. What do you mean by graphing?
So to visualize, start collecting and visualizing. So the issue that we created.
The other question is if we wanna like have the SCI score by the KubeCon. Do you think we be able to do that? Yeah, maybe yes.
I don't think that we would have the whole score by KubeCon, realistically, but I think we can start plotting things and design what it would look like when we have all the factors like plugged in, if that makes sense. So we won't have, for example, I don't think that we'll have embedded metrics, but maybe we can look into how we would get that. Is that too optimistic?
No, I think we can make it to have some base, but like if I read it like this, the fourth point, then I think like written like this, it looks like we will have the CSI score by then. I'm just thinking on how to rephrase it. Maybe we can start collecting and visualizing the base metrics that will build up the CSI score. Or is it too? And then we can like share the roadmap to the complete SCI score.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's good because having the embodied part and figuring out all those parts as well. I think that we probably won't be ready yet, but we can have like the foundation there, and starting with the energy consumption.
We should also add any things that we already completed to this milestone. So the automation setup and so on. But we can also work on this like async because we're also on time.
Yep. I can create it for now and then add issues and we can review it at the next meeting or offline. And I'll add issues to it. All right. Well, we're on time. Thank you all for joining today and for all the awesome collaboration. I think we're at a great pace right now. So it's awesome to see things going. And yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.